Hey everybody in the VC, I thought I'd do one more video. I did two of them, just wrapped them up and posted them. One's the review of the Holland album by the Beach Boys. The other is ranking the songs on the Beatles' past masters in order of preference. This video has, uh, well, nothing to do with music. This is sort of in response to something from Joe, Mean Mr. Mayo, who of course has his music channel, which everybody I think on here knows. If you don't, certainly go check out Mean Mr. Mayo and subscribe. I don't know if there's anyone here who hasn't, but everyone should if you hadn't. One of the best channels on the VC. And he also does, he used to call it Mayo's Marquee. Now he calls it, I don't know what he calls it, the movie channel or something, but he does movie channels because he's, in addition to music, he's big on movies and DVDs and videos and so forth. He doesn't do enough of those movie videos in my opinion, because I always enjoy them. So we should do more of those, Joe. Not that I don't like the music ones too, but anyway, he did a video a day or so ago about the anniversary of the DVD, which was introduced, I guess, 20 years ago. And I remember DVDs. I went out and got a DVD player pretty much right around the time they came out. But and he mentioned when he was talking about the anniversary of the DVD something called DIVX, DIVX, which were these weird, just a not very good idea that didn't go very far. It was a strange type of movie format, if you will, and he was talking about that and compared it to an idea on par with New Coke. It didn't, and DivX did come and go pretty quick, and it was a disaster, and it belly flopped. And so I had mentioned that I had bought some DivX discs, which I'll show here in a minute. I don't have that many, and this, I don't know how exciting this is going to be for anybody. But so yeah, so you had videotape VHS, and that came out. I remember reading that video tape recorders were sold for the first time in the 1963 Neiman Marcus catalog as the Christmas catalog, which I don't know who bought them. They probably cost a fortune then. I don't know what you'd do with them back then because there were no video stores in the 60s or the 70s. So yeah, I guess if someone had a lot of money and bought one, you could have recorded TV shows with them, but I don't remember them ever showing up until the late 70s, and I remember hearing about them probably around 77, 78, and then in 78 in school, you know, all through kindergarten through 8th grade, we had to watch films or educational films on just with a movie projector, and then in 78 when I was in 8th grade, our school got a VCR, which at that time, you know, had wood on the sides, and it was a big, the tape that popped up, and you put the tape in and pushed it down, and it was a big, it looked like it weighed like 50 pounds, and it had the two of the dials like on the old TVs with VHF and UHF. And then got into high school the next year, and there were a couple of people, kids from families with money, that had VCRs, because that was sort of a, believe it or not, a little bit of a luxury item at first. But then, I don't know, by about 80, 83, 84 was pretty much when regular people started getting them or had them. And then, you know, by mid to late 80s is like having a telephone in your house. Pretty much everyone had them, or TV or something. But the funny thing is, when DVD came along, so it was kind of a slow introduction to, they came out and they cost quite a bit of money, and then the price went down over time as more people bought them. And so, you know, everybody didn't go out and buy a VCR in 78. It wasn't until, like I said, mid-late 80s when most everyone had them. But DVDs, on the other hand, and when those came out, DVD players in, I guess, what, around 96, 97, I remember just all of a sudden DVDs were in stores and DVD players, and they were pretty reasonably priced. I mean, they were about the price of what a VCR was back in those days, which by that time you could get a VCR for, you know, I don't know, 50 to 200 bucks, and you could pay more if you wanted. But so DVD players were roughly in that category. And so since they didn't start off being $2,000 or something and then go down the way VCRs had, pretty much people ran out and bought them. and then all the video, and there aren't any left now, I don't think. There aren't any around here, but all the video rental stores pretty much overnight, their VHS tapes, they marked them down to like $1 just to get rid of them because they were bringing in DVD stock and not making or buying new VHS stock. Anyway, about the time, and of course, if you remember back, you had VHS tape and you had beta tape. And I remember even when some of the video stores first came around that they'd have stock of both. They'd have movies for rental on beta and on VHS, and beta phased out pretty quickly. Well, when DVDs came out, there was this thing called DIVX, like I said, DIVX, which is about the size of a DVD, or really about the size of a CD. And I never bought a DIVX player because the whole idea sounded ridiculous and stupid to me. And I don't think they were. I remember seeing the DIVX players and the DIVX discs in stores like Circuit City and Best Buy, like I said, probably 97, 98 or so. And they were here and gone. They were only there for, I don't know if they were even around 6 months, but I don't know who came up with the idea, and it's just a dumb idea. And I've never opened these that I'm about to show you, so I don't know what they look like. I assume they look like a DVD, which, you know, a DVD looks basically like a CD. It just has a movie on it instead of music. Maybe they look like something else, but these are still sealed, so I don't really know. But you bought a DIVX disc, and I guess the advantage, they didn't really have an advantage, but I'm trying to remember back in a cant, was maybe they cost a little less than buying a DVD, like as opposed to if you just wanted to rent a VHS or a DVD. You know, you went to the rental store if you wanted really liked the movie, you bought it. That was the other thing. I remember when VHS movies, when they were brand new, those were like 80, 90, 70 bucks, and then later on, after they're around for a while, they dropped the price down to like 20. DVD, I guess they kind of learned their lesson because they pretty much started out being 20 from the get-go, and then price had dropped down even more, so they sold a lot more DVDs probably than VHS. But I guess DIVX discs were a little less than DVDs. I don't really remember, but here's the ridiculous part: is if you bought it, you could only watch it like 3 or 4 times, and after like the third or fourth time, the movie would erase itself from the disc, so there wouldn't be anything on there. Which is, if you know, some movie you just want to see, so you just go rent it at the video store because it's not something you want to buy, or it's not something you know, so maybe you rent it to see if you like it and want to buy it. But if you buy a movie, then you want to, it's like a book. You don't want to buy a book and you may only read the book once, or you may come back and read it, you know, a couple of 2 or 3 years later. But if you buy a book, you don't want to read it once and then the book magically, the words disappear off the page. So if you decide to read it 4 years down the road, you take the book off the shelf and it's just blank pages. So obviously, if you buy a movie, VHS, DVD, whatever, you buy it because it's a movie you like, and so you want to have it. And you know, so if you want to watch it a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, you can go back, take it off the shelf, and watch it. So it really didn't make any sense to have these movies that you could only watch, I think it was 3 times, maybe 4 times, and then they disappeared. And the public didn't think so either, because this thing just landed on its stomach and flopped big time, and DIVX movies disappeared within a year. I think they were around less than that. Anyway, so I thought it was stupid. I didn't buy a DIVX player. I already had a DVD player, and I don't know if you can play DVDs in a DIVX player or not, and they're not around anymore, so it'd be hard to find one, I imagine. But when this thing, you know, turned out to be a huge bust, Circuit City, Best Buy, all those places that stocked VHS movies and DVDs at the time, they stocked up on DIVX movies and DIVX players. Then when it turned out to be a huge bust, they were like, let's unload this crap and get rid of it, because otherwise we're just going to have to throw it away and take a loss. So they marked the movies down. Here's one that it's, you can see there's a $4.49, and I don't remember if that's the price they were new, but I went in one day to Best Buy, and they were just clearing those things out, and they had marked them down to like $2 a piece. So I figured, I wasn't going to buy a player, but I figured I'd grab them because I knew they'd be gone before long. Why did I do that? Well, I'll show you. Um, there is From Russia with Love, James Bond movie. And like I said, I didn't pay $4.49 for it. I paid $2. And this was 1998. So I guess that's, and there's the DIVX code on it. So there's a James Bond. Here is that's a great James Bond movie. Here's a not so great James Bond movie, but Tomorrow Never Dies, one of the later James Bonds. Pretty crappy one, $2 again. And that's all the James Bond they had, but I also went ahead and picked up, because Marilyn Monroe's big, excuse me, X-Files, which I was never into, but I know that people collect X-Files stuff, so for $2, what the heck. And I don't know how collectible this is, but I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, and Paths of Glory is, well, he had a lot of great movies, but that's one of his best. And so that's what I got there, this huge collection of DivX, 5 movies, so $10, well spent or not well spent. Why did I buy this crap? And if I could find a DivX player today, which would probably be hard to do, if I was to unwrap these and throw the DivX in there, I have no idea whether it'd play or not, given that I never got my 4 plays before it disappears. And it says there, when new, this disc includes 1 limited viewing period. If you can, and then it just disappears. And I think, I could be remembering this wrong, once your movie erased itself, you could, I don't know if you called someone or went on the computer or but you paid some extra money and it would put more viewing periods on it. So if you wanted to keep the movie forever, you'd be paying every 4 views. Just a, I don't know who, just a dumbass idea. I don't know who came up with that. But so why did I buy this stuff? Because it's $2 a piece, and I figured, sort of like they used to have records, not albums, but they used to have like the old reel-to-reel and the old 8-tracks, and some of those are long gone. Those are long gone, but some of those are sort of collectible now for, Beatles albums and stuff. Oddly enough, I've heard that 8-tracks they had kept producing those up through about '88, and I had no idea. I thought they stopped. I remember having a 1980 car, my mom having a 1980 car that had an 8-track player in it, and then the next car she got had a cassette. But so I remember having 8-tracks up through like 79, 80, 81, and past that I don't remember ever having them. So I thought they stopped making them around about 81, 82. I didn't know they'd made them into 88, 87, 86. But surprisingly enough, the 8-tracks that are worth quite a bit of money and really collectible are the ones from like 84, 85 through 88, because by that time nobody was really buying them or paying attention to them. So some of those later albums by Fleetwood Mac, Bruce Springsteen, things that came out in 87, 88 that were actually made on 8-track, they didn't sell very many. So if anyone has them, they're worth, and condition wise and all, if they're good condition, they're worth a little bit of money. That was, I guess, kind of my thinking on this. I thought there's a lot of people that are into James Bond and collect James Bond stuff. So, James Bond VHS tapes sold by the, tons, and so did the DVD releases. But since this thing was just here for a short time and came and went, it's long gone. So I thought, for $2, I'll just keep these sealed, set them on my shelf, and someday maybe they'll be worth a little bit of money. Same thing, like I said, I know people are into X-Files. I know Marilyn Monroe's big. Not sure why I picked this one up, but, so I figured I would do that, set them on my shelf, and maybe, and 80, so I guess I bought these around 98, and 98, 97 to 99, so I've had these about 20 years, and I haven't checked to see if they sell these on eBay or not. They're probably still worth $2. They might be selling on there for nothing, but I don't know. Maybe they'll become collectible someday, and I can sell them and retire. But for $10, it's kind of a strange curiosity to have this weird ridiculous format that came and went very quickly, and uh, I'm not going to open them, and I couldn't play them if I did, so probably ought to just chunk them. But so there's my DIVX library, Joe, and that you had asked to see. There is one real quick, because there used to be the Laserdisc player too. That was, you know, the Laserdisc was like a album size CD, and I never had one of those. Those are supposed to be pretty good quality. I guess DVD sort of made those a moot point. But I remember before we got a VCR, which we got about '83, my parents got something called a video disc player, and you might remember this, Joe, or someone, I don't know, but they were like album size deals, the movies. They're about that thick. They were in a plastic sleeve, I guess, and they look, whereas like a laser disc was kind of just in a paper album jacket looking thing. This was in a plastic sleeve, and I remember kind of pulling the thing and looking at them, and they looked like a plastic white album that had grooves that were a lot thicker or spread apart than a record album. But they had the top of it, and you slid it in the machine, and something caught, and you pulled out the plastic sleeve, and the album thing stayed in the player, the video disc player. And then when you watch the movie, you put the plastic sleeve back in, and it would catch back on and bring the album out for storage. So I don't know if you ever remember that or not, because we had that. My uncle in California had one of those, and my parents, we went out to California in '82, were impressed by that. I was trying to get them to get a VCR, and they fell in love with that. And I was telling them the VCR is a lot better because you can record, and there's a lot more movies and all. But so the video disc player, I think it was called, and there were only, there might have been more, but I remember a couple of places around Fort Worth that sold those video disc movies. And we had one of those, and we had Animal House, I remember having, but then things like Ordinary People, Gone with the Wind, I think Casablanca, maybe My Bodyguard, some stuff. Tootsie, no, not Tootsie, The Graduate, I think. And so then when we got a VCR, like the next year, my parents sold that and all the discs in a garage sale. I kind of wish I would have held on to those. The quality, it wasn't anything like a DVD or a laser disc. It really wasn't even as good a quality as a videotape, but because it would kind of skip and jump sometimes. But I mean, it was watchable. You could record on them. But I don't know if you remember those, Joe, or had any of those, but they were just sort of, you know, like I said, they're about that thick and just the size of like an album sleeve. Those were kind of fun, good memory. I remember watching those shows. So I don't know how exciting this video was for anybody, but there's my DivX collection, and we'll be back later.